In the winter of 1958, two farmers walked into a dairy barn in the middle of nowhere, Minnesota, and walked out with a 24,000-pound monster that would terrify John Deere, humiliate the giants of the industry, and change farming on planet Earth forever. They had no factory, no engineers, no money, just a cutting torch, a welder, and a pile of scrap metal they pulled out of a dead mine. And here's the part nobody believes. The machine they built that winter still has descendants working today, except now they cost over $500,000 and they're painted blood red. So how did two unknown brothers in a barn build a legend? Stick with me, because this story has a betrayal, a bankruptcy, and one of the boldest bluffs in industrial history. Let's get into it. Okay, picture the 1950s, the Red River Valley of Minnesota. Some of the richest, blackest, heaviest farm soil in North America. And that soil had a secret. It was too good. The crops grew huge, but the clay was so dense that when it got wet, it grabbed everything. Tractors of that era were two-wheel drive, one set of wheels pulling, one set just along for the ride. And on that clay, they'd spin, they'd sink, they'd sit there screaming horsepower into the ground and going nowhere. Now meet the Steigers. John Steiger, the father, and his two sons, Douglas and Maurice. Doug could draw, he could sketch a machine in his head and put it on paper. Maurice was the muscle of the operation, a diesel mechanic, a welder, a metal fabricator who could bend steel to his will. And they had a problem. Their farm was growing faster than any tractor on the market could handle. So here's the question that started everything, and I want you to really sit with it. What do you do when the best machine money can buy isn't good enough? Most people complain. The Steigers, they decided to build their own, from scratch, in a barn. But not just any tractor. They had a radical idea, an idea most engineers of the day thought was impossible. And that idea is the reason you clicked on this video. Here's the concept. Instead of two wheels driving and a steering wheel turning the front axle, what if all four wheels were the same size and all four pulled? Four-wheel drive, equal traction, nothing wasted. But that created a brand new nightmare. If all four wheels are locked into driving, how do you steer? You can't turn the front wheels. They're huge, they're driven, they don't pivot like a car's. The Steiger's answer was genius. They didn't steer the wheels at all. They steered the whole tractor. They built the machine in two halves, joined by a giant pivot in the center, and the tractor literally bends in the middle to turn. They called it center bend. Today we call it articulated steering. The front half and back half hinge against each other like a folding pocket knife, and all four wheels stay planted, clawing into that black clay the entire time. Now, where do two broke farmers get the parts to build a 12-ton experimental machine? You ready for this? They drove to Minnesota's Iron Range, the mining country, and they salvaged the axles, the radiator, the center pivot, pulled off a dead Euclid mining scraper, the kind that hauls earth out of open pits. The engine? A Detroit diesel 671 yanked from a truck. 238 horsepower at a time when a typical farm tractor made maybe 40 or 50. Let me say that again so it lands. A normal tractor of the day, 40 horsepower. The Steigers built 238 in a barn out of garbage. But there was one problem they couldn't salvage their way out of. And how they solved it is the most clever thing in this whole story. See, that Euclid mining machine they stripped for parts, it originally used two engines, one for the front wheels, one for the back. The Steigers had one, so they had to get power from a single engine across that bending center pivot to all four wheels, while the whole machine flexed and twisted in the mud. Think about how hard that is. The joint is constantly moving. Power has to flow through a hinge that won't hold still. Their solution? A hand-built center gearbox, a transfer case with four universal joints. And here's the brilliant part. The gearbox wasn't bolted to either half of the tractor. It was allowed to float, to slide left and right as the machine bent. That floating gearbox is the beating heart of the entire Steiger legend, and they figured it out with farm tools. By March of 1958, it was finished. 20 feet long, nearly 10 feet wide, 24,000 pounds of welded steel. They named it Barney, officially Steiger number 1, a giant nicknamed like a family pet. And here's a fact that gives me chills. Barney still exists. The actual first Steiger tractor sits in a museum in Fargo, North Dakota to this day. You can go stand next to the thing two farmers built in a barn 65 years ago. So they fired it up, drove it into the field, and it worked. It outpulled everything. It floated over clay that swallowed other tractors whole. Mission accomplished, right? Build one tractor, solve your problem, go back to farming. Except the neighbors saw it. And that's where everything changed. You couldn't hide a 24,000-pound green monster tearing through a field. Other farmers came over, they stared, and then they started asking the one question that turns a hobby into a destiny. Can you build one for me? So the Steigers built a smaller second tractor, the Model 105, again out of used parts. Then another, each one custom, each one hand-welded in that same barn. They weren't trying to start a company. Let me be clear about that. Doug and Maurice did not set out to become tractor manufacturers. It just happened. Demand pulled them forward. And then in 1963, a man named Earl Christensen walked into their lives. Earl was an implement dealer about 25 miles away. He'd heard whispers about these barn-built beasts, so he drove out to see for himself. He took one look at what the Steigers were doing, and he said one sentence that would launch an empire. If you build tractors out of new parts, I will sell them. That's it. That's the spark. A handshake in a barnyard. Earl became their first sales manager, and the Steigers, three farmers who never wanted to be in business, agreed to go all in. But before we get to the factory, the millions, and the betrayal, I have to tell you about the names. Because Steiger started doing something with their tractors that no serious manufacturer dared to do. And honestly, it's the coolest branding move in farm history. Steiger didn't name their tractors with boring model codes. They named them after predators. The wildcat, the bearcat, the cougar, the panther, the tiger, the lion. A whole menagerie of apex hunters painted in that unmistakable lime green, each one bigger and meaner than the last. Farmers didn't say, I run a Steiger. They said, I run a panther. I run a tiger. You felt something turning the key on a machine named after a predator. That was the point. And in that barn, that same converted dairy barn, the Steigers hand-built around 125 tractors across 5 different designs before they ran out of room. 125 giants born in a farm shop. By 1969, they'd outgrown everything. So they did the unthinkable for a family operation. They sold the majority of their company, 52%, to a group of investors and moved the whole thing to a real factory in Fargo, North Dakota. 26 employees, a real assembly line. The barn era was over, and what happened next was an explosion. Because in 1974, they broke ground on a factory so massive, so fast, that the numbers sound made up. I'll show you. 1974, the new Steiger plant in Fargo, 420,000 square feet. They built it in under a year. And its capacity? Are you ready? This factory could roll out a brand new multi-ton articulated four-wheel drive Steiger tractor every 18 minutes. Stop and picture that. Every 18 minutes, a green giant rolls off the line. From 2 guys in a barn to an industrial machine pumping out monsters all day long. The whole industry was watching now. And the giant of giants, International Harvester, wanted in so badly that they bought a 30% stake in this upstart from North Dakota. Steiger was so good at building four-wheel drive tractors that the big boys paid to be part of it. Steiger was even building tractors for other companies, machines that wore Ford badges, Alice Chalmers badges. They licensed their designs overseas. A company called Raba in Hungary built Steiger-based tractors. Vandal in France did too. 2 farmers from Red Lake Falls were now a global design force. They had conquered the field, they had conquered the factory, and then Steiger pulled off something I still can't believe a tractor company did, a psychological bluff against their biggest rival that belongs in a spy movie. This might be my favorite part of the entire story. Early 1980s. John Deere, the most powerful name in farm equipment, was about to launch a new line of big four-wheel drive tractors. Their 50 series. A direct shot at Steiger's territory. Steiger needed to slow them down, so they built something strange. A couple of experimental 2-wheel drive prototype tractors, massive ones, reportedly 300 to 350 horsepower, over 20,000 pounds, running triple tires on the back just to get all that power into the ground. Here's where it gets sneaky. Steiger rented farmland right next to John Deere's home base in Waterloo, Iowa, and they ran those giant prototype tractors out in the open, where Deere's engineers couldn't help but see them. Now think like a John Deere engineer in that moment. You look across the field and you see your rival casually testing enormous tractors, and the logic hits you like a freight train. If Steiger can build two-wheel drive monsters this big, imagine how insane their four-wheel drive ones must be. The story goes that Deere's engineers got spooked and went back to the drawing board on their new four-wheel drive line, afraid of what Steiger was about to unleash. It was a bluff, a diversion, a psychological play run by a tractor company, and it worked. At this point, Steiger is on top of the world. Predator named giants, a global empire, outsmarting John Deere himself. So how does a company this dominant end up in bankruptcy court just a few years later? Because that's exactly what happened, and the reason is brutal. The 1980s farm crisis. This is the part of the story nobody wants to tell, but you have to understand it. In the early 80s, the entire American farm economy cratered. Crop prices crashed, interest rates exploded, farmers who'd borrowed to expand suddenly couldn't pay, land values collapsed. Families lost farms that had been theirs for generations. And who gets hit hardest when farmers stop buying? The company that makes the most expensive, biggest, top-of-the-line tractors on Earth. Steiger's sales fell off a cliff. That gleaming 420,000 square foot factory, the one cranking out a tractor every 18 minutes, by 1986 it was running at 25% capacity. 3 out of every 4 spots on that line, empty. In 1986, Steiger filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Let that sink in. The barn-built legend, the company that scared John Deere, the global design empire, bankrupt. It looked like the end. It looked like the green giants were going extinct, joining all the other proud American names that the 1980s wiped off the map. But here's the twist. The death of Steiger wasn't the death of Steiger at all. Because someone was watching, someone with deep pockets and a plan, and what they did next is why you can still buy a brand new Steiger right now in 2026. Later in 1986, Tenneco, the parent company of J.I. Case, bought the bankrupt Steiger company, reportedly somewhere around $75 to $80 million. And here's the genius of it. They didn't kill the name, they kept it. Case knew Steiger was the gold standard in articulated four-wheel drive tractors, and that reputation was worth a fortune. So the Fargo plant kept running. For a while, those famous lime green giants kept rolling out the doors, until the green slowly gave way to Case IH Red. The Steiger badge became the flagship, the most powerful, top-of-the-line four-wheel drive tractors in the entire Case IH lineup. Not a footnote, the crown jewel, and the innovation didn't stop. In 1996, under the Case IH banner, the Steiger line did something wild. They introduced the quad track. Instead of 4 wheels, 4 independent rubber tracks, one on each corner. Why does that matter? Because those tracks spread the weight of a 600 horsepower giant so well that it barely compacts the soil, while gripping like nothing else on Earth. It was so good that competitors scrambled to copy it. Today, you'll even see that track design showing up on the front of combines. From a floating gearbox welded in a barn, to 4 computer-controlled tracks. Same DNA, same name. So let's go back to where we started. That dairy barn, that Minnesota winter. 2 brothers and their father with a torch, a welder, and a pile of salvaged mining scrap. They never wanted to start a company, they just wanted a tractor that could beat the clay. But that single idea, bend the machine in the middle, drive all 4 wheels, refuse to get stuck, was so good that it survived neighbors begging for copies, survived a move to a real factory, survived going global, survived a bluff against John Deere, survived bankruptcy, survived being bought out, survived a complete change of color, and it's still here. Right now, today, a farmer somewhere is climbing into a brand new red Steiger that costs more than a house. And underneath that paint is the exact same idea 3 guys figured out in a barn with salvaged parts and 0 engineering degrees. That's the thing about Steiger. It was never really about the steel. It was about what happens when ordinary people refuse to accept that something can't be done. Barney is still sitting in that museum in Fargo. Go see him sometime. Stand next to 24,000 pounds of proof that the best ideas don't come from the biggest companies, they come from people who simply got fed up with getting stuck. If a barn-built giant from 1958 just earned a little of your respect, do me one small favor and let it earn a like so more people get to hear the story these two brothers never even meant to start. And honestly, American manufacturing is full of stories like this one. Companies you've never heard of that quietly changed the world. I'm telling the next one soon. You don't want to miss who it is. I'll see you in that one.